The engine is the most important part of the automobile. This is what makes it move and function properly. Without it, an automobile would be a shell without a life. Now that I have removed the cover, specifically the cylinder head cover, I can now discuss to you the engine, its parts, and its functions. The first part, the main frame of the engine, is called the cylinder block. It's where the internal combustion happens, and it contains some of the key components of lubrication and cooling, such as the oil galleries and the water jackets. Now, as you can see, this is the cylinder head. Below that is the cylinder block. Obviously, I cannot remove it, so I'm just going to show it through pictures. These ones are the fuel injectors. They are exclusive only for diesel engines. Since this is a diesel car, we have fuel injectors. For gasoline cars, they have electronic fuel injectors. These fuel injectors spray the fuel to the internal combustion engine. Now, the fuel injectors are mounted on the intake manifold. This manifold is used during the intake stroke of the internal combustion, and it makes sure that the air fuel is distributed evenly. In this case, since it's a diesel engine, air will come in there and it will be compressed by the pistons. Opposite to the intake manifold is the exhaust manifold. This one brings out the exhaust gases to the catalytic converter so that it can reduce the pollutants of the gas, and then it would exit through the exhaust of the back of the car. So we have the engine head or the cylinder head, the intake manifold, the exhaust manifold, and the fuel injectors. These four. Now we're going to discuss the cooling system. Every automobile has a cooling system because this is really essential, as this regulates the temperature. At the same time, it does not let the engine to overheat. The first thing that we have to discuss is the reservoir of the coolant. The coolant is ethylene glycol or antifreeze. So this is the reservoir of the coolant. We can measure the coolant's level through the markings of the side of the reservoir, so that we can know if the car is short on coolant. So as you can see, our coolant levels are really good. It's full. Next, we have the radiator, one of the most important parts of the cooling system besides the reservoir. Here, this is the radiator, accompanied by the cooling fan, which is right over here, are the crucial parts of the cooling system. Using the cooling fan, this cools the antifreeze mixture. The coolant passes through the metal fins so that the air from the outside may pass through and cool the mixture easily. The cooling fan, on the other hand, is obviously mounted on the radiator. It slows down its revolutions per minute during faster speeds and speeds it up when the acceleration is slower. It is operated by the battery, and this component is really vital for the engine's cool down, as it removes the heat from the coolant through the radiator using the outside air when the engine is stationary. So we also drift to the radiator cap. It's right here, this orange cap with the warning sign. This main purpose is to keep the pressure high so that the boiling point of the coolant will increase. This also keeps the cooling system away from contaminants that come from the outside air. This allows the coolant to return to the engine once it's cooled down. So there we have the reservoir. We have the reservoir, the radiator, which is right here, and the cooling fan, and the radiator cap, which is over here. We have those four of the cooling system. We move on to the lubrication system. This system is important because it reduces friction between moving parts and cleans the system through filtering the dirt and dust around it. So before we discuss the reservoir of the medium, which is the oil, we're going to discuss the dipstick first. So this is the dipstick, the yellow thing here. So when I turn it around like this, you can see that this measures the level of oil inside the oil pan. Before we put it back, we have to clean it first. Okay? And then we put it back really gently. There. That's the dipstick. Now we're going to discuss the oil reservoir or the oil pan. It's below the car or below the engine. So I have to point this to you. So it's down below here. It's under the engine. Right there, as you can see, that is the oil pan. We know that because of the drain plug that we can see there. Beside that, the blue one is the oil filter. The oil filter is important because it filters out contaminants in the oil that the oil strainer failed to separate. So we have the parts regarding the internal combustion, the lubrication system, and the cooling system. In addition, I'm going to show you the alternator. So right here with the yellow warning is the alternator. This is the one that produces most of the electrical energy of the engine. It is different from the battery because the battery only operates to start the engine and to give power when the engine is not turned on. The alternator recharges the battery as well. Finally, we have the timing belt. This is responsible for syncing the camshaft and the crankshaft. It is located right here. May be difficult to see, but it's right there where I'm pointing. So those were some of the major parts of the engine. By the way, the model of this car is Kia Carnival 2012. I hope you learned something today. See ya!